when the past is dismissed, or at least patronized, as backward, unenlightened, and riddled with prejudice. Of course, the word past is a slippery one. It can be used to mean any number of things that the critic doesn't like or understand. The Middle Ages, the Catholic Church, belief in miracles, wars of religion, the pre-Copernican science, the epistles of St. Paul, traditional families, social and political hierarchy, original sin, absolute standards of goodness, truth, and beauty, feudalism, and so forth. As a corollary to this evolutionary ladder, the modern world, deeply infected with chronological snobbery, has taken for granted that its scientific, philosophical, theological, sociological, and aesthetic advances have superseded what was believed and practiced in the past. Those people who lived back then thought X, but we know better today. If only they could have had access to all the things we know to be true, they would have been able to step out of their ignorance and blindness. But Europe just had to wait for the coming of Marx, Darwin, Freud, and Nietzsche to find out how the world really works. It's a lovely myth with the power to make one feel wise and privileged, but it is no truer than the meta-narrative to which it has attached itself. In matter of fact, there has been no clean-cut progression from creation to evolution, absolute truth to relativism, supernaturalism to naturalism, revelation to empiricism, authority to experience, faith to cynicism. To the contrary, these pairs have always existed side by side, struggling and competing with one another. And when anything like a trial was held to determine which member of the pair came closer to the truth about God, man, or the universe, it was more often than not the former that won the debate. Pre-Socratic philosophers like Thales and Greek sophists like Gorgias advocated strict empiricism and moral relativism more than 2,500 years ago. The Epicurean Lucretius was a full-blown evolutionist 2,000 years before Darwin. The Stoic, Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire in the 2nd century A.D., firmly believed that men could be good without God. In the early church, Marcion dismissed the God of the Old Testament as a moral monster and distinguished him from the New Testament God of love. In the Middle Ages, nominalism reduced words to mere names, thus dethroning goodness, truth, and beauty as real absolutes. In the 17th century, Spinoza denied the authority of the Bible and reduced God to the laws of nature. In the 18th, Hume was quite sure that he had disproved miracles once and for all, and that the problem of evil had rendered null and void the Christian view of God. All of the above ultimately denied the immortality of the soul, the resurrection of the body, or both. Indeed, the idea that, at death, we join an amorphous one soul, an idea that most associate with the East, has had advocates in the West from the pre-Socratic Pythagoras and Parmenides to the Gnostics of the early and medieval church to the American Ralph Waldo Emerson. What then, I ask myself, had prevented these ideas from gaining the kind of ascendancy they have attempted to achieve over the past 2 centuries? The none too subtle answer I received from my graduate professors and from the textbooks they assigned was that these enlightened ideas had been held back by ignorance, superstition, and religious hierarchy. Needless to say, I was not satisfied with that answer. So I tossed the textbooks aside and began to read the actual words of the great thinkers of the Western tradition. It was only then that I realized that materialism, empiricism, skepticism, nominalism, and a dozen other isms had not been held at bay by credulous people and corrupt priests, but by such spiritual and intellectual giants as Plato and Aristotle, John and Paul, Irenaeus and Tertullian, Augustine and Aquinas, Luther and Calvin, Jonathan Edwards, and Blaise Pascal. Long before the days when Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Daniel Dennett helped make atheism a household word, these great philosophers, theologians, and apologists had put atheism on trial and uncovered its faulty logic, its inconsistencies, its special pleadings, and its decidedly mixed motives. Of course, that is not to deny that ignorance, superstition, and religious and secular scientific authority